the question is, while an agent is showing a listed property, the seller and the buyer enter into a verbal oral agreement for the purchase of the home. So the seller's home and you're showing the property. Here it's not really sharing who you're representing. Are you the agent that is showing it, meaning you brought the buyer? Or are you the listing agent and the seller, you're representing the seller and then you're showing it to an unrepresented buyer? Either way, here we have the most important thing on this question is that there was a verbal agreement between the buyer and the seller. Nothing is in writing. If something was to come up later, because this was a verbal agreement, it may be unenforceable because. So notice these are words that we don't even use every day, but we're going to review definitely this half part of the puzzle. The biggest part, the biggest piece of this puzzle is the word unenforceable. So if I was to check in what you already know, what does unenforceable mean to you? Not sure?
Enforceable in a court of law.
Okay. Give me more. So yes, it's unenforceable in a court of law, meaning that what is it I'm not able to get, I guess, or not do because it's unenforceable. Okay. When we're looking at contracts, and we'll review the beginning part of what makes it a contract. In real estate, we're driven by a lot of these agreements or contracts. From the contract, when you're the broker, the agents that you're going to be hiring, whether they're independent contractors or employees, you're going to have an agreement that they're working for you. And then you have agreements with the buyers, the landlords, and the sellers in terms of doing that business for you to do that work and also get compensated. When we are looking at enforcement of that agreement, we start off with the ones that we normally have in writing are enforceable because they have the 5 elements. We'll review this as we go along. The 5 elements of a contract and what makes it a contract, whether it's in real estate or outside of real estate, is that it has the 5 things. Somebody put in an offer and somebody said yes. There's some value, something of value that was presented that was agreeable between the parties. That's known as consideration. Majority of us know that as money. Legal, I can legally sell the house. You can legally buy it. This is a legal transaction. And then competent parties, we hope that they know what they're getting themselves into. They are of legal age to be able to be part of this particular transaction, get into a contract. And then consent is sound mind, clear, sound mind. They're not under duress. Nobody's forcing them to do this. So an enforceable contract starts off with, first off, do we have all the 5 elements? What makes it enforceable? Meaning somebody's able to force this person to do what they promised to do. Is in a court of law, it's in writing. That's it. Enforceable contract has the 5 elements, it's in writing. Enforceable contract is the 5 elements, it's a valid contract, and it's in writing. So that's all we need to have in order to have an enforceable contract. Sometimes, as presented in this question, we might not have it in writing, And the example I usually use is, for example, the service that I am providing you today. We never really got anything in writing. There was an offer. I am doing this particular session. You accepted this consideration. It is legal for me to provide my services. We're all of legal age to get into this agreement, and we're all of sound mind. However, we didn't write a contract. So if there was any dispute between us, then it would, where we're trying to work it out. Unenforceable is a valid contract. It's valid. Why? It has all the 5 elements. However, it's not in writing. This is a handshake. It has to be resolved between the individuals. We cannot be able to go to a judge and present our case because it would be deemed as hearsay unless there's a recording. You got the person's permission to record them in some states that require that. However, it's still valid between us because it has the 5 elements. This is where we will come back and review because we have to iron out a valid contract, a void contract, or a voidable contract. Unenforceable, two sentences or 2 words, valid, not in writing. That's all. Unenforceable, valid, not in writing. So we cannot take each other to court for that. If we come back to the question, so now that we've reviewed unenforceable, your choices are, first one, agreement does not comply with statutes or frauds. Option 2, oral agreements are never enforceable in court. Option 3, which none of us selected, it is not assignable by novation between the parties. The oral agreement does not include the agent. So we've eliminated those 2 because the words assignable or assignment or novation as definitions don't apply here. We'll review that shortly. So we're left with the 2, which in most of the times with multiple choice, you'll be left with 2 choices, and then it's just determining which one is the better or the best choice out of the 2. The second option or answer or choice rather, oral agreements are never enforceable in court. One would say, well, in order for me to get it enforced, Brenda, you just said it needs to be in writing. The caveat is there's some oral agreements that still you could take each other to court. There's all that thing of hearsay, recording each other, but then let me give you an example. In Maryland, if I have an agreement for you to stay in my house and it is less than 1 year, I could have an oral agreement with you for you to stay in my house, but if there's any damage, I can still go to small claims and go through that process. Any lease or agreement for you to rent someone's house that's less than 1 year in Maryland doesn't have to be in writing. But if somebody does stuff while they are renting my space, I can still take them to court for damage, even though we don't have a written lease and it's less than 1 year. So the word never is the one that throws out option 2. Option 1 is the better of the 2. The agreement does not comply with statutes or frauds. I pause here and go through, then what is statutes or frauds? If you were to be presented with a question that's asking you about statutes or frauds, then statutes or frauds as just a definition is that certain things need to be in writing. That's all it is. Statutes or frauds is certain things need to be in writing in order for you to sue each other. Statutes or frauds, some contracts must be in writing in order for it to be enforceable. So that's kind of the distinction there. Sometimes you have to go with the better of the two choices. If it is just definition that you're looking for, if the question was presented differently, asking you to enhance upon statutes of frauds is the contracts must be in writing in order for you to sue each other, depending on the circumstances. We'll go through assignment and novation, but any of you have questions? Okay.
Oh, all good.
Go ahead. Okay, good. Assignment, and let me know if you have any examples as well to add on to this. Assignment is you're transferring your responsibilities that you have in the contract to someone else or another party. The examples we usually give in a licensing class is you started off as Brenda Kasuva. You agreed on everything in that contract, seller accepted and agreed on the terms. You have everything, consideration, you have sound mind, you have age, and there's consideration. And then you decide, I want to limit liability. I don't want this property to be under my name, Brenda Kasuva. I want it to be under my LLC, Tattoo Consulting. So now you assign the responsibility from Brenda Kasuva, the individual, to the company, Tattoo Consulting. Assignment is also the one that is normally used to when we have, and again, wholesaling is different in all parts of the country, but the simple way of wholesaling that you might have experienced is where you have this person who has the buyer, they connect the seller and the buyer together, and they're just assigning that contract. They get the contract agreed with the seller, and then they assign it to a buyer that they found who's going to go and be responsible for everything in that contract. For test purposes, assignment, you're transferring responsibilities. It has to be agreed upon by both sides. If you have any other examples, please share. Novation, new, nova, new, novation, new. This is a new contract. So it's substituting for a new contract. Some of you probably might be experiencing this to where we have the assumable loans. If, for example, a seller has a FHA loan and they're trying to sell the property, it's assumable. Whatever balance they have on their loan is what now they're going to be pushing it over to the buyer. So the buyer is taking over the mortgage for the seller. Since they're assuming it, the lender will go through novation where they're going to have a whole new contract with this buyer who's now taking over the mortgage that the sellers currently have when they're selling their house under the option of an assumable mortgage. So novation, new contract. Or another simple way of putting this is you started off with 2-3 people, one of them messed up or something came up, now they're no longer able to qualify, but the other 2 individuals are still able to, based on their financials and everything. So now you get a whole new contract drawn up with just the 2 individuals instead of 3, but you're not really changing the terms. Everything still stays at the same, but you're just coming up with a whole new contract with 2 names instead of 3. Some of you might go the route of the addendum, but novation, nova, new. For test purposes, novation, new contract, substituting the old one. You're not really changing the terms. Leads us to the next question. Unless there are comments on, I've covered majority of the choices and the definitions here. Question 2, all of you got it right, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. A written agreement for which a purchaser agrees to buy and a seller agrees to sell is a contract. Good. Assessment, as we know, is for the tax purposes. Fiduciary responsibility obligation is in the agency topic. That is what you owe the client once you are hired. Everyone got this right. Seller has accepted but made a change. This is known as a counter offer. Both of you know a contingency. Contingency would be something that needs to be done in order for us to proceed. So whether it is the home inspection, they have to sell another house, we are waiting for the appraisal to be done. So it's a condition that must be done before the contract is fully executed or enforceable completed. Those are the contingencies which you're familiar with as you have been working in the field with buyers and sellers and landlords and tenants. This question comes up and presents the opportunity to review more definitions. Alex is 14. Kent is 17. They both inherited a piece of property. The next year, we're assuming now each one of them probably has heard a birthday. So let's assume Alex is now 15, Kent is 18. Kent has now deeded and transferred the property to Alex. Alex could be 14, depending on when his birthday is. Worst case scenario, it's a year later, he's 15. So Alex, being 14 or 15, now that he's gotten the property or they have gotten the property from Kent, immediately puts it on the market. You, an adult buyer, you come in and you write an offer. Alex accepts it. Which of the following is true? 1, Kent must also sign the contract to any deed. Well, Kent has already sold it to Alex. 2, the signature of Alex's guardian is required, question mark. The buyer cannot legally compel Alex to sell, question mark. D, last one, number 4, both buyer and seller are both bound by the contract. All of us eliminated choice 1 and choice 4 in terms of it has been accepted. So Kent doesn't have to be involved in it. They already sold it. Both seller and buyer bound by the contract. Okay, I'm not sure there. So now we are left with the 2 choices which each of us selected. We review the definition of voidable. And I break up that word and stressing upon able. When we are looking at this agreement, Alex is still under the legal age of most states in terms of selling a property. So Alex is either 14 or 15. Alex is the one who put it on the property. Therefore, and we haven't really been given any, I don't know, insight as to whether Alex is of sound mind or not, whether they're able to get into a contract. So in terms of a guardian, here that would be less points than this one. This is the answer. The buyer cannot legally compel Alex to sell. Why? This is a voidable contract. And when we're talking about voidable contract, what does that mean? Which is what we're going to review. When I'm reviewing that, I'll take it from the beginning. We start off with what makes a contract. We've covered this before, but we'll echo it again. No matter what type of contract it is, whether it's in real estate, outside real estate, whether it's verbal or not, or it's in writing, every agreement per contract law has the 5 elements. Somebody made an offer, somebody accepted it, and we all know about it. So that's offer and acceptance, delivery. The next thing that we need is consideration, anything of value, money, love and affection, services, tickets to a game, something like anything of value, consideration. Sound mind, which is consent. The question that we were reviewing, did it indicate anything to consent or sound mind that we might need a guardian? And then the last one is legal. Can I legally give you this service? Can I legally do this transaction? So we just need the 5 in order for us to say that we have a contract. Sorry, the 5th one is age. Competent, which is age. As a side note, given examples, yes, most states agree that when you're 18, you're legal, you're able to get into certain contracts. However, as an example, I might be 19 years old, but I can't, for example, get a rental car because for rental cars, they put it as 25. So I wouldn't be able to get into that contract in terms of renting a car because I am not competent. I am under the age of renting that car. Now we'll give examples. Are there times when people present documents to show something different than what they actually are? I'm sure. Let's start off with valid. Valid has all the 5. It checks off the boxes. As we're reviewing, there was an offer, there was an acceptance, there was delivery. Everyone knows about it, something of value, it's legal. We have competent parties in terms of age that can get into this contract, and we have sound mind. Are there times that we don't have everything? Yes. And when we don't have all the 5 elements, there was never really a meeting of the minds to do with the price between the buyer and the seller, then that's void. It's done. So some of us call that this is a dead, it was not accepted contract. Legal terms, that's a void contract. If the seller didn't accept the buyer terms or the buyer didn't accept seller terms, that's a void contract because there was never offer and acceptance. If you're missing consideration, it's void. So this is where we talk about contingencies. Buyer was supposed to get a loan and didn't. That's a void contract because now we are missing the consideration. Or it is legal. And an example you might see later on, and it might make it to your PSI exam, is, for example, gambling is illegal in the state, and somebody's trying to rent a space to provide a casino. If gambling is illegal in the state, then this is what? A void contract because it is legal. I remember void contract, it's missing one of the 5 to begin with. On the onset, it's missing one of the 5. Valid has all the 5. Offer and acceptance, there's delivery, consideration, consent, competent parties, and it's legal. Let's get to the fun one. Voidable. Voidable, voidable. In this stage or this type of contract, I enunciated by breaking apart so that I can stress on the word able. There's an opportunity, there's a possibility that it's going to be void. So remember, void is you're missing one of the 5. So what makes it voidable? On the surface, everything looks the same. Everything looks okay. There was an offer and acceptance. Everyone knew about its delivery. There was consideration. But then, as we know, there are contingencies and so on, and things come up. So from the onset, we assumed everyone was of legal age. We did not even check people's driver's license when they're getting into an agreement. So from the onset, everything looks okay. However, something comes up to where now we have to stop and figure out what's next. We get to the stop sign, somebody presents something, and usually it's the person who has the thing. The thing here we're talking about, somebody presents that they were under the influence or undue influence, whether it's from a legal drug or not, they were under the influence and therefore they did not have sound mind, so they bring it up. They were under duress. Somebody's forcing them to sell this property. It's an elderly parent or grandparents, and the grandkids or the kids are kind of forcing the parent or the grandparent to sell. So they were under duress. They were stressed on that. There was misrepresentation. Somebody forged somebody's signature. The big one is minor, or they were under the influence, which gets into kind of undue influence. As examples, somebody presents it. We get to the stop sign, and now we have to confirm the thing that has been presented. So I'm getting to the stop sign. We're looking right, left before we proceed. So now we have to confirm, Brenda, how much alcohol, legal or illegal drug, had you consumed? Did somebody take a test and confirm how much you had drunk, and was it over the limit, and so on? Somebody has to confirm that. But if we can't confirm that, I didn't take all those tests, then sorry, Brenda, we move on as valid. So voidable is my daughter speaks up or Alex speaks up and says, hey, by the way, did you know that I am now 15 or 16? And you're like, what? You don't look 14, 15, 16, or 17. I would never have guessed that you're under 18. Can we get your birth certificate? Can we get all of these documents to confirm? If we can, and it's confirmed that Alex is under the legal age, then now we go to a different stage. We now go to a void contract. Why? Because it's missing competent parties, which is legal age, for you to get into this transaction. But from the beginning, Alex never told anyone. Nobody asked. We all assumed. And if Alex never brings it up, then we move on as valid. Now, some will say title company is going to confirm that. But if we just stick to the definition, voidable, somebody brings it up. We get to the stop sign. We check and confirm. And if we can validate what it is that you brought about as an issue, then now we stop. That contract is no longer in play. It's void. If we cannot confirm what you brought up, we move on as valid.